Hello and welcome to Portsmouth This Week. I'm your host, Conley Zani. This show is under the auspices of Rich Rayner, the Portsmouth Town Administrator. Together, Rich, myself, and the entire Portsmouth This Week team are on a mission to build community. We do that by bringing you accurate and timely information about the events and issues that impact you. We introduce you to the faces and the personalities and the leaders in our town that make up this very magical place we live. I'm honored to introduce to you our guest this week, Tod Drake. He is Portsmouth's Wastewater Manager. Todd, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Conley.
I'm very excited to talk about wastewater, and some of our viewers might be like, what? I shared with a few friends we were doing this, and they were like, what are you going to talk about for 30 minutes? But I assured them, after chatting with you this week, there is a lot to say, and there's some drama and everything, and so thank you for being here, and I can't wait for this conversation.
Well, thank you for having me. I want to first acknowledge Mr. Gary Crosby, who retired yesterday.
He's our town planner, right?
He was instrumental in getting the wastewater program formed, dealing with DEM, all the negotiations that went into the town ordinance. So he's been a mentor to me, and kind of a guiding light with this whole thing over the last 5.5 years that I've been here. We are.
I hear he might come back in a little consultative role on some projects.
That's what I heard too.
Which, thank goodness, right?
That's what I heard too.
We need him.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Institutional knowledge, as they say.
Yes, yes. So a little going away party for him yesterday.
Right.
That's
exactly.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, so let's talk a little bit about how the whole wastewater department came to be, like your job. How did that, it was a really interesting story that I think our viewers might not know.
Right. So the Department of Environmental Management in Providence samples water quality throughout the state, and they've got a number of test sites in the Secana River, in the East Bay, right around Portsmouth, around Aquidneck Island, truly, but they have detected for many, many years high levels of certain bacterias. In detecting those at their test sites, they've also looked at the storm sewer outfalls, and high levels of fecal coliform and other things led them to basically say to the town of Portsmouth, you're polluting the waters around Aquidneck Island.
So basically Portsmouth was called out for putting too much bad stuff in the waters.
Exactly.
Okay, when was this? When did they discover this?
Well, they've been noticing it for many, many years. They finally, in the 2010 time frame, approached the town and said, you really need to do something about this. The town had actually contracted with a couple of different engineering firms over the years who had done a number of different studies on the water quality, not only coming out of the storm sewers, but also specific to sites, residential properties mostly, in the Island Park and Portsmouth Park areas.
Like those were the trouble sites, at least at first.
Right, because of the low-lying area and the proximity to those waters where they do the testing, that was the general assumption, basically, was that it was, that was the affected area. What we found as we've been doing the inspections throughout the town is that it's not only those areas. There are failed septic systems of all shapes, sizes, and colors throughout the town. And it's not just Portsmouth, it's everywhere, but the biggest problem is old, outdated systems that haven't been maintained properly. Any pumper will tell you, you really should have the system looked at 2 to 3 years, at minimum.
Yeah.
Some of them recommend even more, depending on the use.
Well, I know we're going to get into all of the scheduling and what kind of system you have, and this very cool system that is there to help make us, kind of do this right. But back to the original, the DEM was like, hey, Portsmouth, there's a problem, and you're saying this is kind of the 2010 timeframe. And am I right in saying that's kind of when we launched into this great debate over, are we going to do sewers? What are we doing, right? And then that was nixed, the sewer,
right? And I think
because it was so expensive, and
it's come up prior to that time frame, but it became a lot more of a concern because of the states saying you've got to do something about it. And their original thought was that for the areas of Island Park and Portsmouth Park at a minimum, and potentially Common Fence Point as well, that a municipal treatment plant should be put together and start servicing all the properties in those neighborhoods.
And that means like a sewer treatment plant, like just for the layperson here who knows nothing about
a plant
this.
much like they have down in Newport by the traffic circle.
Okay.
A facility very similar to that is what the state was saying that Portsmouth needed to do.
Right, so we looked into that, but it just became extraordinarily expensive.
Right. Again, 3 different engineering firms were hired over the course of a few years. Most of them did sort of a cursory study of existing permits, DEM permits for septic systems on those properties in Island Park and Portsmouth Park. One of them went as far as doing physical on-site inspections. That happened in the 2010-11 timeframe, where they would actually do a full inspection and pump out of the system, much like we're doing now.
Yeah.
But this was sort of to see what was there and what we needed to do in the future.
Yeah.
So.
Well, okay, so how did your job come about, like as part of the solution here?
Well, again, the state said, you know, Portsmouth, you're doing something wrong.
And they were fining us, right? Or trying to, or maybe.
They did set up a fine, and they basically said you need to, you know, do something or else is what it boiled down to. And the town took it to a vote multiple times. There were multiple meetings from what I understand. And
this is before your time.
This is before my time. The outcome was basically, no, we don't want to go to that expense. Why can't we just, you know, leave what we've got? And these engineering studies show that we had quite a few cesspools in those Island Park and Portsmouth Park areas. Didn't look at anything else in town at that point, but the basic idea was that there were enough sort of offending systems, or potentially offending systems, that we would need to do something. The town council president at the time took it up with the director of DEM, and they basically worked out a deal that resulted in a memorandum of agreement, basically a legally binding contract between the town of Portsmouth and the DEM. Part of that memorandum of agreement was establishing a wastewater management district and hiring a wastewater management manager, basically,
And that's
to kind of oversee the district and the ordinance that would allow for certain scheduling of inspections and replacement of certain things on a certain time frame.
So that's what the ordinance is about. So we passed an ordinance that basically said everybody's got to get on board with this program, basically, right?
And again, so the ordinance, the DEM was, you know, very adamant about certain things being in the ordinance. Mr. Crosby, the town solicitor, the town, you know, council, they were all involved in putting this piece of legislation together. And it was finally in the fall of 2014, it was enacted, and then basically went into effect in 2015, where the inspections began. First letters went out by my predecessor in the fall of 2015 to some areas in Island Park. And the map over here to my right.
Let's look at this map. What is this? That is Island Park, right?
That's Island Park and Portsmouth Park. And basically the town was broken up into 18 mailing zones. Okay. And you can see 1 through 8 are labeled here. The first 6 mailing zones were done at 3 per year. So 2015, 2016, and into 2017, there were 3 per year. Then the groups got considerably larger. Once we completed all of these areas and moved over to Common Fence, the numbers jumped from 100 to 125 in a mailing group up to 700.
So what do you mean by a mailing group? So you're saying, so when this started, I'm living there, right? And I receive a letter that says what?
Basically, the letter says you have, there's a requirement that you do an inspection called a first maintenance inspection, and that is something that's spelled out in a septic system handbook that's published by the state. It was put together by the researchers at URI and people involved at DEM, and there's certain things that must happen during a first maintenance inspection. Most important of which is that the tank gets completely pumped out. They want to be able to see the structure of the tank and ensure that it's viable as far as not being something that's going to collapse. Also, there are certain structures inside the tank that must be intact to prevent solids from finding their way out to the leach field, which could cause a system failure.
Right. It's kind of complicated underground there, right?
As far as most people know, it's just everything goes away. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. There are things that happen underground that do need to be inspected and maintained on a regular basis.
And your background, you have background in that. Like before you came into this managerial position, you were doing that work, right?
Right. I worked, beginning in 2006, I worked for one of the local distributors of one of the advanced treatment type systems.
Yeah.
That particular system is the most widely specified here in Rhode Island. We've actually gone from about 300, 325 of those when I started in late 2016 to over 900 of them today, just here in Portsmouth.
Wow.
So it's kind of the favorite of the engineers. There are 6 or 7 different technologies that the state has approved for use here in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a task for manufacturers to get their product approved by the state, but we've got about half a dozen or so different ones that engineers can choose from. And they do that, it's really site specific. Each individual property has its own soil types and available space that lend itself to one particular type or another.
Right.
And so by having a number of them, the engineers have different tools to use for given circumstances.
Right, right. Okay, all right. Well, so I get a letter and it says you got to have your first inspection, and so that's a bigger deal than the ongoing, I guess. So
right.
So all of these people in zones 1 through 6 got this letter.
Well, it was, again, it was date specific. So the town planner's office looked at the map of town, looked at all the various properties that are there, and geographically broke it down into these 18 different groups. The idea was, the thought process at the time was that Island Park and Portsmouth Park are the, quote unquote, most offender, areas that the DM was most concerned with.
Yeah.
So we'll start there. And again, those groups were a little bit smaller, allowing a little bit of extra time perhaps to get those inspections done, get the people in the town kind of used to having to have this kind of program in place.
Yeah, how did all that go?
I wasn't here at the time, but from what I understand, it was a little bit slow to start. There were a few people who, didn't quite get the program, if you will, initially, and so part of the process is there is a violation process that's laid out by the town ordinance, and also there's municipal court in case people just ignore the situation altogether. So it started off a little slowly, but things have started to progress as more and more people become aware. They talk to their neighbors, oh, this is going on, or somebody across town says, oh, I heard you're having to do this. What are my consequences? I get a lot of phone calls from people who are in different areas of town. They're concerned that they didn't get a letter yet. Well, it's not because you got missed. It's just that it's not your turn yet. It's basically what it boils down to.
Right, right.
The letter basically says you've got 60 days from the date of the letter to get your inspection done. There are a list of approximately 40 certified inspectors. The certification process is through coursework at URI, and the URI maintains a list of those inspectors statewide. My predecessor went out to everybody who was on that list at the time in 2014 and asked them to voluntarily be on the list. And we have about 40 names on that list currently. They've all passed that certification process. They've all provided the town with an application basically saying that they will perform to a certain standard. And again, that standard is laid out in guidance from the state.
And where do I get that list? So if I get the letter, I'm like, oh my gosh, who do I contact? Do I call you, or?
Well, the list goes with each letter, but it's also on the town's website.
Okay.
So you can find that off the main page. There's a wastewater management page on the town's website that has a lot of information. The history on the wastewater program
Yeah,
is
kind of what we're talking about.
Exactly. There's links to all of that there. The memorandum of agreement is there. The copies of town ordinance are there. We've also got low interest loan information that's there for people who might have to replace a system.
I definitely want to talk about that. I want to get into that in a moment, because that's going to be really helpful for folks. But let's just talk about, how is this going? Like, so initially you said it was a little slow start. People clearly, I can understand why they're like, what?
Right.
Because it's money, right? It's expensive.
Sure.
Are you finding now people are, I'll say, they're agreeing to this and they're in the system and it's going well? Or are you still chasing down a lot of
Not a
people that
lot.
are kind of going la 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 la?
Not a lot of people. There's still a few holdouts, if you will, from people
Yeah.
who just don't want to do it. But we're currently on the very last group
Of the 18
of
mailing?
the 18, right? And that's
Oh, wow.
that's Hog Island.
Oh,
Roughly 125
of course, right?
seasonal use properties. Everything else in town has been done up to this point. I've actually got another little map of,
Oh, let's
of
show it,
town
please.
that shows everything. It's a little bit smaller, maybe a little bit harder to see, but as you can see, the Island Park and Portsmouth Park neighborhoods up here were where we started. Then we kind of worked our way back and forth east to west towards the Middletown line, and we included Prudence Island back in 2019. They had a boil water order from the state because of contamination in their wells, and we thought that might be an appropriate time for them to also be looking at their septic systems just in case there were any that were in failure that might be contaminating some of those drinking water wells. So
wow, okay.
we adjusted the schedule a little bit to include Prudence at that point, basically just leaving Hog Island up there at number 18, and that's all that's really left at this point.
So the program that kind of started in, say, 2014, 2015, these folks in Hog Island are just now getting their first, you got to go do your first inspection.
Right. Letters went out to them in February.
Right,
And
okay.
because of the logistics of Hog Island, getting equipment and people out there's no ferry, there's no bridge,
Right.
We gave them a little bit of extra time.
Yeah, of course.
The standard 60 days just wouldn't fly, even though it's only 125 properties. So they've really got till the end of the summer to get
Are
their
you
inspections
finding
done.
with COVID and everything that it's just even hard for people just to get any service or inspection? Like, it seems like just
There-
everything is taking more time these
There-
days. I don't
yeah,
know. Do you sense
that absolutely happened early on in 2020, even into early 2021. I received quite a few phone calls from people who said, I'm out of work, I can't really afford it right now. Certainly under those circumstances, we can give somebody an extension,
Yeah.
when they can, better.
Right. So it's really just, you need to have a conversation with you.
Right. That's
Right?
the
It's
most
like you're
important thing.
understanding. You just need to know, like, communicate. Don't just
Absolutely.
bury your head in the sand.
I'm very easy to find at Town Hall. Call me, email me, be happy to talk to you about, whatever circumstances you might have.
Yeah.
So we're working on our very last group, but what happens is we've got different types of systems that are on different schedules.
Yeah.
They have to be inspected at certain intervals.
Yeah. So you have a graphic or something. Can you pull that up, maybe?
I do, yeah. So there's a third-party system that
I love this.
most
by
of the
way.
municipalities in Rhode Island use, and there are a number of states that use it as well. It's not just here in Rhode Island. But basically, this is one of the screens that I look at all day, every day on my computer.
Yeah, every day.
Okay.
This is your first go-to,
This is
right? I love it.
The first open window on my computer every morning.
You're such a wastewater nerd,
So I
Todd.
really- I really
you
am.
really are. I love it.
I've heard. So this is what I'm looking at, and this is how I gauge who gets letters and when.
Okay, so those are the
Okay.
types of systems there?
So different types of systems along the left-hand side here.
And so there's a lot of different types of systems.
We've got over 7,000 individual systems in the town of Portsmouth. So we've got quite a few different technologies out there. Again, some of those advanced systems that the state has approved for certain conditions. We've got a number of those different technologies in addition to the conventional systems that everybody kind of is used to, a tank
Yeah.
and some sort of leaching field.
Yes,
Okay.
and all of these systems are on a different schedule.
Right.
Right?
So we've got some of the advanced systems, which the requirement on those per individual manufacturers is typically a 6-month service interval.
Yeah.
The town's ordinance says a minimum of once per year. So I'm watching those. If they get to 1-year time frame, I'll contact the service provider and say, what's the status of this one? And for one reason or another, they may not have gotten to it yet. Either it's a scheduling issue on their end, or maybe they haven't heard back from the homeowner, saying that they've got permission to come out and do service. On occasion, it's something that the property owner might be avoiding for one reason or another.
Yeah.
But those are at a minimum once per year. Then we've got the cesspools and other unpermitted systems. Okay.
Okay.
Unpermitted systems typically mean they literally don't have a state permit.
Right, so that's super problematic. right?
That's a bigger problem than anybody really thought it might be.
How many do you think we have of those? if you had to guess?
I would say it's probably between 700 and 750 in total, not inclusive of cesspools. Those are just actual tanks and
Just
leach fields
unpermitted.
with no documentation.
So
Okay.
a tenth.
Pretty much 10% of the town, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
In Island Park and Portsmouth Park, there is a requirement to replace those before January 1st, 2025.
Okay.
So you've only got about 2.5 years if you've got one of those systems.
All right. All right. So say I can't pay for that. Let's talk about the loans really
Okay,
fast.
so the loans, there are a couple of different programs that are available to
Right.
property owners in Portsmouth. The most commonly used one is serviced through Rhode Island Housing. It's called the Community Septic System Loan Program.
Okay.
It's a 10-year term. It's 1%. It's actually a service fee. It's not an interest rate, so it's not going to fluctuate. It's not going to go up and down with other interest rates like
Thank goodness for that.
bank loans and whatnot.
Right.
So it's fixed at 1%. It's a program that's been available in the state of Rhode Island for many, many years. It became available to Portsmouth homeowners when the wastewater ordinance was enacted.
Okay.
You have to get permission from DEM to be eligible for that program. So
Okay.
in order to do that, you have to have a wastewater management district and an ordinance with this inspection program.
Right, right.
So the basics are it's 1%, 10-year term, you can borrow up to $30,000.
Okay.
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 So you would apply through Rhode Island Housing. I have those applications on my desk, or I can email them out, or they're also available on the wastewater page on the town website.
Okay.
Okay. It's easy to download.
Does
It's a one-page
30,000
form.
usually cover it?
Historically, the maximum loan amount was always $25,000,
Yeah.
and all of the other municipalities are still on that $25,000 maximum cap. We recently increased ours because we found that systems were increasing, at least the conventional systems had gotten into the middle to high 20 range.
Yeah.
We've also found some of the advanced systems are now going over 30.
Oh, well, okay.
You know, they're just kind of creeping just past 30,000 these days.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons we increased it just recently to try and cover some of that.
Okay, all right, all right. So that's one of the programs, and then there's another
There's
that
another,
is available.
right, that's available through Church Community Housing down in Newport. I do not have their application available, but I do have a fact sheet that I can email out. I've got copies on my desk. That's also available on the wastewater page.
Right. And you can direct people to them.
Absolutely. Somebody can call or email me. I can email directly. I can give them phone numbers, contact phone numbers for both of those organizations, directly to the person they would be working with for their loan.
Yeah, so it is a loan. It's not necessarily a subsidized.
It's truly a loan.
Yeah.
Again, so the Rhode Island Housing product is up to $30,000, a 10-year term. Probably looking at somewhere, if you borrowed the full amount, somewhere in the $250 to $275 per month range.
Yeah.
The programs that are available through Church Community, there are a couple of different ways they structure things, and that's why we don't have anything concrete, because they do different things for different people.
Yeah.
Individual circumstances
right.
might warrant one program or another, but typically it's about a 3% loan for those
Okay.
folks. They do use income caps. They go by HUD guidelines, so it's individually tailored to the person's household. How many people are in the house, what neighborhood they're in, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Whereas the Community Septic System Loan Program is not. There's no income cap. It's available pretty much to anybody who is a property owner
Right.
in that
Right, that just
municipality.
feels they need some assistance.
Right.
That's great. Well, I think it's wonderful to have this this program for Portsmouth, because one, are we convincing DEM that we're on top of things? Is that how we must be moving toward that?
I think we are. I
Right?
have periodic meetings with various components of DEM.
Yeah.
I've been up there for meetings. I've been on Zoom calls with meetings over the course of the COVID pandemic. Phone calls a couple of times a month with various people up there, and the feedback I get is that we're on the right track. We're doing what we're supposed to do per that memorandum of agreement.
My understanding is that they're pretty impressed with this system here, that you have at your fingertips access to what's going on basically with every system.
Yeah, I can't claim any credit for that system. Again, it's developed by somebody out of state, but it is widely used here in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
The town did adopt that use because it had been so favorably received by the other municipalities, and it's a great tool. It really is,
Yeah. So why would I, as a citizen of Portsmouth, be coming to you? I understand sometimes you have lines out your door. So let's talk we have just about 3 minutes left. So let's just kind of talk about, like, why am I going to be reaching out to you?
Any number of reasons.
Yeah.
Are you doing a project on your house that might require either a septic system upgrade, or, and again, that usually entails some sort of system increase in size, new system, and that could be because you're adding bedrooms to the house, and that's kind of the biggest thing.
Yeah.
The state designs around the number of bedrooms, and so
Okay.
systems are sized appropriate for that use.
I think I knew that. Yeah, that's a big thing.
Right. Any increase in the number of bedrooms will trigger something going on with your septic system.
Okay.
If you have a failed system, you'll want to contact me. Again, I've got information about different people who can help you with that, the loan programs. Reach out to me through email or my phone contact. You can definitely, get a lot of useful information as far as that goes. If you're selling your house, or if you're buying a house if you're an out-of-state buyer who's wondering what's going on in Portsmouth, and I get those calls all the time, both from people buying and from realtors.
Right.
I've got access to all the DEM's files for all of the various systems in town, and I've got those all cataloged within this system.
Right.
So within a matter of minutes, I can find those documents and email them out to somebody.
Yeah.
If they're not available on DEM's website, which we've got about 125 to 130 systems that only Portsmouth has in paper format, I can scan them and email them to
Oh,
somebody.
fantastic.
I have realtors
So
coming in. and
Realtors
calling
all the time are calling you.
All the time. Yep,
Yeah.
Yep. And a lot of times what they found is that maybe a house had some sort of work done on it at one point. They added a bedroom, or they made two smaller bedrooms into one, or something like that, and the septic system might not be consistent with that actual property as it sits right now.
Yeah.
And then at that point, they can't really list the property accurately unless they know exactly what the septic system is.
Absolutely. Or maybe another reason I want to put in a pool, right?
Pools, where can I put my fence? Can I build a
Yes,
deck?
Yes.
You name it. Any kind of construction project or landscaping
all sorts
project.
of improvements. Need to call you, Todd.
Please do.
That's great. So
Please do.
really, I guess I'm left with we just want to communicate with you,
Right.
right? Like
That's the most important thing. I can't help if you don't call and ask for my help.
yeah.
So again, I'm at Town Hall during normal business hours. I answer emails even after hours. Reach out to me. Let me know what's going on. I'd be happy to do my best to help you out.
Yeah, because this whole wastewater plan is here to stay.
It is. It doesn't go away.
Right. It'll
Ever.
never go away. So just call.
The agreement was that we would never be doing a municipal sewer system anywhere in town, so septic systems are the order of the day and will be in the future.
Well, I am thrilled to have talked to you. It's so nice to talk to somebody that's so excited about what you do, and you're a nice face of this program. So
Well,
thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much. My guest today has been Tod Drake, Portsmouth's Wastewater Manager. We'll see you next time on Portsmouth This Week.